I'm Jason Harper, the digital media manager at the Kansas City Public Library. And if you have cell phones of the flip variety, please silence them, or better yet, break them in half. But if you have a smartphone, I've arranged some important usernames and a hashtag for us to use. Kansas City Public Library is on Twitter at KC Library. Duct tape, obviously, is the man of the hour, John Jantsch, and we'll be using the hashtag DTMTCE if you like to tweet to get the conversation going online. I've also sent the call out for questions in the wider community of people who couldn't be here. So if there's time later, someone outside the library might ask a question using that hashtag, and I'll try to fit it in. Congratulations. I don't know how many of you are entrepreneurs or small business owners or marketers or just people looking to do more with your work and make it mean more, but I think that you will get something very inspiring out of this evening. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Country Club Bank, for providing generous support this evening, including the reception that you enjoyed. Melissa Topham for the bank will be giving the full introduction for John, but I'd like to say a quick word or two. John is a great friend of libraries. He is literally a member of the Friends organization, and he even worked a library mention into his TEDxKC talk at the Kauffman Center earlier this year, which I was there for, and I was thrilled. What I've gotten from his work, both his books and his excellent blog at ducttapemarketing.com, is that if you're driven by curiosity and the desire to go out and get knowledge and teach yourself how to use that knowledge to make yourself better at what you do, then you can find success in what you do. And other than pretty much the library, I don't know too many people or organizations who give out as much knowledge as freely as John does. So I'm very proud that the Kansas City Library can get to host the launch of John's latest book, The Commitment Engine, which is for sale out there. And now I'd like to welcome our sponsor, Melissa Topham from Country Club Bank. She is the Relationship Banking Officer and Manager of the Country Club Bank's Financial Center, located at the corner of Southwest Traffic Way and Westport Road. Melissa has 13 years of retail banking experience and has worked for Country Club Bank for over 8 years. She holds a degree in business management and has lived in the Kansas City area for the past 10 years. So, Melissa.
Thank you, Jason. Well, it's definitely my honor to be able to introduce John Jantsch. As many of you know, he's the owner of Jantsch Communications and the creator of the duct tape marketing system. He's also been a loyal customer of Country Club Bank for over 20 years. So that is a testament to his loyalty to small businesses, as Country Club Bank is a locally owned bank. The Duct Tape Marketing Consultant Network trains small businesses in simple and low-cost methods for growing and promoting their businesses. John just wanted me to kind of speak from the heart, and all I can say is that I'm looking forward to listening to what he is going to provide for us this evening in the way of knowledge. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. John Jantsch.
So thank you all very much for coming down. And I know coming downtown isn't everybody's, at 6 o'clock at night isn't everybody's cup of tea. Isn't this space incredible? Jason mentioned I'm a big fan of the library, but I think that I wrote probably half of, I've written 3 books now, and I've probably written half of each of them in a library space at some point in time. So, one of the things that I think that libraries have really, in fact, I had the pleasure of speaking this summer at the American Library Association's annual conference, and I think that libraries have been sort of under siege in a way as our behavior and our way we consume content has really changed. And the Kansas City Library, I think, has stayed utterly relevant as an important aspect of this community, and I really could do anything I can to support them. I want to explain this picture a little bit. It's on the cover here. Besides being a really bad attempt at looking extremely serious, This is an organization called Dear World that took this image. And during, I just want to tell you a quick story about it. During the Katrina catastrophe in New Orleans, a photographer by the name of Robert Fogarty got together with his friends, and I'm quite certain that there was some beer and wine involved in this, but they decided they wanted to do something hopeful, for the community. It was a really tough time in New Orleans, and Robert was a photographer, and so at a party one night, with their friends, he and his friends started doing this, writing messages of hope on their arms, on their bodies, just telling something they wanted to tell. And he captured them, and they just started putting them around the city of New Orleans. And I think it was a week or two went by, and this really caught on, and people started saying, what is this? It started making national news. And he's created, really, I think, an art form out of this. And so check out dearworld.me. And if you get a chance, so Robert goes and he sets up at events, and he was here in Kansas City a few weeks ago, and he goes and he sets up at these events, and people will just tell their story, tell something they want to get off their chest, tell something they're proud of, something they want to make a statement about, and it is truly amazing to watch, not just what comes out of it. Of course, me, always thinking marketing, I'm thinking, I got a book coming out, this is going to be the subtitle of my book, I'll write that on my arm. But it's really amazing to watch people interact with the camera and send these messages, and it truly is an art form. If you get a chance to do it or go on their website, I encourage you to do it. So about 2 years ago, my publisher came to me after the launch of the referral engine, which, Jason, if you did that, I saw it in the lobby. Thank you for doing that. Came to me after the launch of that book and said, this book tells a story about how to get more referrals, maybe why people give referrals, but what about a story that talks about what makes somebody commit, that what makes somebody want to go out of their way, that they're so excited about an organization that they want to go out of their way to actually tell people about it? What about a book about commitment? And I thought, well, that's a tremendous idea. A lot of the companies I talked to when I interviewed them for the referral engine really had a seed of commitment that really ran through it. Now, one of the things I quickly found out was that the word commitment's a pretty tricky word. It has a lot of meanings to different people. It actually is what, in many cases, drives people towards things. It's in many cases what actually drives them away from things. It contains the seed of hope. It contains the seed of our greatest fears. And when it comes to business, I found that I believe that there's a terrible misconception about the word commitment. We see these pictures of entrepreneurs that are driven, they're standing on the rock, driven against the wind and the storm coming at them. No matter what, they're committed to growing their business somehow, even if it means it's sucking the life out of them. And so I wanted to get at this idea of commitment from a different sense. And so what I wanted to do is I started talking to companies that I saw had a ridiculous sense of passion for community. That outer ring of community, those loyal customers, it made sense. These were the people I wanted to find out how they generated so much commitment. So I went and talked to companies that clearly had that. We all know names of companies that clearly had that. We all hopefully interact with a few companies like that we're willing to go out of our way to tell people about. And what I found immediately was not only did they have a ridiculous passion for community, everyone in their organization had a ridiculous passion for the business. That there was a culture of shared commitment that existed inside these organizations that was almost freakish for anybody that's worked in one of those organizations that, well, maybe that doesn't exist. And so it was that inner ring that really built the community, that really created this loyal community. And of course, digging deeper, what I discovered was that the founder or the owner or the CEO or the original partners of these organizations had a hunger for extreme clarity. So in other words, what they had done is that they had discovered through soul-searching, through gut-wrenching experimentation, through accident sometimes, that they had discovered what made work worth it to them And they had committed to that higher purpose and made that the single-minded focus of why they did what they did, and that drove all three of the circles. So in doing this research, it changed my mind dramatically about this idea of commitment when it comes to business. And that the commitment engines that I write about in this book are simply organizations that have committed to a higher purpose that the business serves, and not necessarily knowing how they're actually going to get there or how they're going to achieve that, but that drives every decision they make. It drives how they attract people that want to work in that organization, and it becomes the natural outcome of the community that is very passionate about that. I'm going to introduce you to a few of these companies, but what I have found is that this level of clarity for a business becomes their strategy. Strategy is one of those terms that is bounced around so often in small business. And what I've discovered is that knowing exactly why you do what you do is the most effective strategy you can adopt. I'd like to introduce you first off to Tony and Mary Miller. They own a janitorial services company in Cincinnati, Ohio. A few years back, they were doing several $1 million, had about 30 employees. A success, really, in every sense of the word, and yet they felt like total failures. And here's why. They woke up almost every single day about 30 employees short of the work that they had committed to do. See, they couldn't find and keep committed employees. So, like a lot of great entrepreneurs, they said, we're going to solve this problem, and we're going to solve it on a Saturday. And here comes the library reference, Jason. And so they went to the library, and they locked themselves in all day, and they said, we're going to check out every book we can find on retention and HR, and we got to learn how to do this. And one of the nuggets that they picked up was that you need to make it easy for your employees to get to work. You know, get rid of all the hurdles that you can in any way you can. And so one of the things that they decided to do was they were going to buy transportation. They were going to buy a bus. I think it was a van, actually. And they were going to provide the company shuttle for their employees. And so they buy this bus, and they start going out and picking up their employees and taking them from jobs and bringing them into work. And it was actually one of the first times that they had gone out into the neighborhoods and the communities where their employees actually lived. And it was the first time they had seen, in many cases, the hopelessness and the poverty that existed in these neighborhoods. So what they quickly decided was they didn't have a people problem. They had a dreaming problem. See, apparently not that many people dream about going into the janitorial services business. And so consequently, the people they were attracting, or that the industry was attracting in the standard fashion, were people that had lost all hope, that had given up all their dreams. This was like the last place. And so they said, what if we decided to make our business all about making dreams come true? What if we installed an entire layer of management in our organization? We called them dream managers. And their entire job, or at least the majority of their work, would be to help every single employee identify a dream, go after that dream, and make sure that it happened. Didn't matter how big or small. Maybe it was going to get a GED. Maybe it was going to send your kid to college, go on vacation. It didn't matter. That was their job. They were going to install dreaming as a major strategy in their organization. Now, fast forward to today. Jancoa has about 200 employees. They do about $15 million in business. They have literally no turnover in an industry that has over 400% turnover. And the thing they'll tell you that they're most proud of is that on the street, they're the company you go to work for if you want to get out of the janitorial services business. So they have actually committed to making their company all about making dreams come true, and they've disguised it as a janitorial services company. That has become the single-minded focus of every decision they make, and it's made all the difference in the world. I want to introduce you to another company maybe some of you are familiar with. In Chicago, Illinois, 37 Signals. Anybody use Basecamp, High Rise, some of the programs that they've created? Another story. Jason started with a couple partners a web design firm. And they really started it because they wanted to do things differently. They wanted to be different than what they'd seen everybody else in the industry doing. In fact, they'll tell you if you ask them, they really couldn't. They were unemployable. They couldn't get along with what they saw other people wanting them to do, so they started their own company. Anybody have that epiphany? And one of the projects that they actually came up with was they needed a better way to communicate with their customers. And so they created their own project. They couldn't find anything that worked the way that they thought things should work. And so they created their own program. They called it Basecamp. And very quickly, some of their customers started saying, can we have that? Can we use that? And it was a matter of months before they decided, you know what? Shift everything, pivot, that's the new word. We're changing our entire business model, and we're going to be now a software company. But we're going to do it on our terms. We're going to do it in a completely different way. We are going to be utterly different. We are going to throw out everything in conventional wisdom. So conventional wisdom in a software company is you give it all away for free and hope a few people convert into paying customers. You try to get some VC funding so that you can ramp up very quickly and cash out. You don't worry about being profitable. You hire all kinds of workaholics. You work them to the bone and promise them options. And they said, we're going to be a different kind of company. And I won't make you read all that, but useful is forever. Great service is everything. Clarity is king. These are the core beliefs that they live by. Remember the movie? City Slickers? Jack Palance. Billy Crystal's character asked Jack Palance, what's the secret to life? What's the secret to success? He said, one thing. Of course, then, Billy Crystal says, well, what's the one thing? He said, well, you've got to figure that out. And that's what I'm suggesting we all have to do as business owners. We have to figure out the single-minded higher purpose, the why we do what we do, and we have to bring that to every element of the business. So in marketing circles, anybody that's done any classic marketing training, you've read about the 4 Ps. They're still teaching this stuff in college. Heaven forbid. It was that you created a product, you priced it, you got it placed in stores, you promoted it. That was the idea. And I think today's business, the 4 Ps have dramatically changed. And the 4 Ps for me, and how you find this clarity that I'm talking about, is that you center your business in this idea of passion, purpose, a value proposition, and then a personality or a persona that actually allows you to live that value proposition in action so that people can actually experience it. It's not just words that you put on a brochure. So the idea of passion is that that's your why. That's the owner's why. You have to understand what you're passionate about, why you get up and do what you do, why you love what you do, and you have to get very, very good at getting better at that. There's in fact, I think Kelly, I was talking to you about this. You've probably all heard, do what you love and the money will come. There was actually a book, I think, titled that, and I'm here to tell you it's complete and utter BS. Yes, you have to do what you love. You have to do what you're passionate about, because otherwise it's just too hard. But you have to commit to getting really, really good at what you're passionate about before anybody's going to pay you the money for that value, for that passion. Purpose, which is the why of the business. So beyond your own passion, it's not enough to have your own passion and commitment. That's really hard to do with a microphone on. It's not enough to have your own passion and commitment. You have to be able to generate that in others. I mean, if you're ever going to grow a business beyond what you can keep your arms around, you have to be willing to commit to this single-minded idea, to this higher purpose for the business. And as one of my favorites, Peter Drucker, said, you have to actually be brave enough to live it. You have to be brave enough to say that I don't care what everybody else in our industry is doing. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, the third part of that then is you have to communicate that. That has to become your marketing message. Your value proposition has to be not our products are better, our services are better. We call you back when you leave us a message. It has to be, here's why we get up every day. Here's what we believe in. Do you want to join us? And the companies that I interviewed that took this approach, that made why they do what they do, how they're different, why their people were committed, they made that their marketing message, had these incredible communities and these incredible cultures. You have to lead with your why and let that attract people that also want to be part of that story. So the last piece, persona. And this is really the idea then of saying, okay, here's our higher purpose, here's what we believe, here are our core beliefs. How do we put that in action in a way that's very attractive to the market? How do we demonstrate that? And I believe one of the best ways to demonstrate that is through human personality characteristics, the positive human personality characteristics that really attract us to each other. So a lot of times when I'm talking to people about this idea of finding clarity and purpose, it's the age-old question. It's like asking people, what do you want to do for a living? What do you want to do when you grow up? We have the answers. But as entrepreneurs, we've stopped asking ourselves the right questions. We have to ask ourselves better questions. You want to find your passion? Ask yourself these questions. What do you want out of life? Maybe the easier one for some people. What don't you want out of life? What's really holding you back? So often, when people truly find what they're passionate about and they go for what they really have always wanted to do, they've had to give up something in order to do it. And I don't mean give up buying the car. I mean they've had to give up their fear. They've had to face their fear and say, you know what? It's time for me to stop working for a paycheck. I had to, just with some of the people that I communicate with online, a very, very large company today acquired another company about 6 months ago, and today they laid most of them off. And I saw all these people talking about how horrible that was, how awful that was. And I guarantee you there's a percentage of those people that wish they had left that company 6 months ago and started their own thing. What's your superpower? And this is really one of my favorite questions to ask people, because a lot of times what it gets at really is this passion. Because for most of us, I mean, if you were going to ask, what my superpower is, maybe some of you would say it was speaking or writing. Well, maybe some of you wouldn't, but I'm here to tell you my superpower is curiosity. And that's what drives me to be a successful entrepreneur. I have to know why something works, why it doesn't work, what's next. And I have to find that, and I have to share that. And that's really what drives me. And I've been able to build an entire business model around that superpower. My dad couldn't come tonight. He was going to come. And he would tell you this story, that I have 7 brothers and 2 sisters. And they, can you imagine ever, taking 10 kids somewhere, but, they would occasionally take us, say, to the grocery store, and somebody had to push all the carts. And he would jokingly say that their standard line was, Helen, my mom, you watch the other 9, I'll watch John. What are your purpose questions? What do you love most about your work? What are the 2 or 3 highest payoff activities? What are the things you should be doing more of? Who do you need to see you as a hero? Again, one of my favorite questions. A lot of people think, well, that's sort of egotistical. But to me, what it gets at is, it's the same thing as being a parent in many cases. Who do you never want to let down? For me, it's small business owners. It's my clients. I want them to see me as a hero, because what that means is that I'm making the right decisions, I'm doing the right things, I'm never going to let them down. How can the business serve your passion? And do you have a story that you can start telling people why you do what you do? Your proposition questions now come to the actual business. You know, how can we serve our higher purpose? Doing something nobody else is doing, solving a great frustration, creating an obvious innovation, creating totally unique experiences. These are the questions that you need to sit down with, spend a day with. When's the last time you actually did that? When's the last time you actually quieted the noise in your head long enough to do that? And then finally, what do we want our personality to be? Is it inspirational, innovation, play, creativity? How do we put our higher purpose into action in a way that people can feel and experience? So one of the things I found that I talked about is clarity. Well, the second piece of this is culture. And every business has a culture. It's funny, a lot of small business owners I'll talk to, they will tell me, well, we're just a couple people, we don't really have a culture necessarily. But every business does have a culture. In some cases, it's just who you're being. And it's not necessarily the espresso machine and the beanbag chairs and the foosball table that we all want to think about and talk about as culture. I want to introduce you to a company that I think has one of the healthiest cultures I've ever seen. It's a company called the Sky Factory in Fairfield, Iowa. Bill Witherspoon was 65 years old, decided that he wanted to start his fourth company. What the heck? But he wanted to do it in a way that was completely different than any of the companies that had ever started. In fact, he said to himself, I was never good at managing people, so I'm going to create a business. The single-minded purpose of this business is going to be that I'm going to create a business where people will manage themselves. But first I have to tell you what they do. It is so cool. So they create digital skylights. So these skylights are panels that they would install in, say, a 5-story building on the second floor, but they're digital, and so every now and then a bird would go by, and the branches kind of waft in. And what they found is the health benefits of these in buildings where there are no windows and no skylights, are absolutely tremendous. And so the business is actually doing incredibly. But what I want to talk about is how he created this business where people can manage themselves, this culture where people can manage themselves, and actually probably work harder than any organization that I've ever experienced. So here are their beliefs. Number one is autonomy. There's no hierarchy. There's no org chart. There are teams because they have different functions in the business, but there's no manager of the team. Everybody on the team rotates through the team, and they actually, at some point, manage the team. Complete transparency. Everyone in the organization knows how much money's in the bank, how much everything costs. Whether it was a good month or a bad month, they share everything. Consensus. Everybody in the organization has to actually, on anything that's a major decision, everyone in the organization has to actually participate in making that decision, or it doesn't get made. Now, you'd think that would cause chaos, right? But when you have autonomy and you have complete transparency, everybody makes decisions like owners. And you think about it in your own organizations. If it's just you have complete autonomy, right? You're the boss. You're in charge. You have complete transparency. You know what's going on. You have complete consensus. You make decisions. So imagine bringing that that same idea to an entire organization. Now, they also have a tremendous way in which they share ownership because it's a very profitable company. And everybody participates in the profit of the company. Everybody shares in the profit of the company. But they also make decisions like owners. So it's not a matter of saying, hey, we're going to have this great culture, so we're going to go out and get all this cool stuff. They actually say, no, you know what? We can do without that piece of equipment, or we can do without hiring that employee because it cuts into the profitability of the company. But they also make decisions like, we need to get that piece of equipment, or we need to get that employee because it's going to make the business more profitable. It's one of the hardest working but healthiest cultures I've ever seen because it's a culture of shared commitment, shared stories, beliefs. They all participate in the planning process. They all understand the outcomes. And they all participate in the ownership of the organization. The third component is community. And what I've discovered in these companies that I call commitment engines is that community is really the natural outcome of clarity, of having this healthy culture. This happens to be a local company, which I don't get to profile very often, I should say. Natalie George opened Cafe Gratitude really just a couple blocks away from here about 2 years ago, and she actually only served her first meal about 6 months ago. So now you might say, seems like an odd business model. But what she did is, she didn't have the money. She went out to a restaurant in California, in Berkeley, California, called Cafe Gratitude. She had an incredible meal there, and she said, someday I'm going to open one of these. She started talking to the owner of that, and they agreed on her commitment to opening one of these restaurants in Kansas City, Missouri. But she didn't have the money to open it. She didn't have the experience. So she started first building a community. She started going out and holding workshops and teaching people how to cook. This happens to actually be a all-vegan, actually raw restaurant. So she started teaching people this healthy way of cooking and of eating, and started holding workshops, and she created something she called the Community Builders Program, where you could buy a $1,000 gift card, and when she got open, it would be worth $1,200. So she effectively crowdfunded the business. So she built this incredible community around her business, or the idea of the simple clarity around her business, before she ever had anything to sell. I went on the opening day when they opened the doors actually for business, and the line wrapped around. It was full inside, and the line wrapped completely around a city block. That's how important this idea of community is, and community has changed. Community is no longer our customers. Community is now everybody who actually can impact our business. All of our friends, followers, partners, vendors, even competitors now make up this entire ecosystem that we're calling community. And it has to be there has to be an extreme passion for building that community as opposed to just focusing on customers. So the last company I want to introduce you to is a company, anybody bought from Threadless? Awesome t-shirt company in Chicago, Illinois. The story, Jake and his partner actually were graphic designers, and they had this forum of other graphic designers, and they loved working with graphic designers, but they were sort of pained by the fact that there were all these people out there, really talented graphic artists that either couldn't find work or couldn't make enough money doing what they were doing. So they said, you know what, I have an idea. Let's have a contest. We'll have all of our friends, these graphic designers, design a t-shirt, and we'll have everybody in the community vote on it. And if, whichever design wins, we'll pay that person a little money, but we'll also print the t-shirt. We'll sell the t-shirt, and we'll give them some of the profits. That was about 15 years ago. Now they do about $300 million in business in this model. And the thing that's so unique, and I think instructional about this business, is the community for Threadless actually is the product. They have built this loyal and passionate following because their single-minded focus was to create a place where graphic designers could showcase their art and make money. And so the community now submits somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 or 400 designs a day. The community members all vote on the design, and then they I think they're up to about $4,000 is what's awarded to the graphic designer. But then they've never had a t-shirt that bombed, because they had every single t-shirt that they bring out is an instant winner because the community created it, voted on it, and then bought it. What an incredible model. Now, the thing that I was really struck by, and again, you need to go check out their offices. They're in just west of downtown Loop in Chicago. And this is just where the entryway, and they have a couple Airstream trailers, and there's a basketball court out in the warehouse, of course. The thing I was struck by in talking to a number of their employees is, first off, most of them had come out of the community. Most of them were passionate community members that still bought t-shirts, that still submitted designs. Go on some forum somewhere, on your Facebook page if you like, and say something bad about Threadless. And I guarantee you will get 4 or 5, or 400 or 500 maybe, but at least 4 or 5 people that will come on and tell you what an incredible company this is, and you must have just had a bad experience. And that idea of extreme passion for this community is what makes this business completely different. So the idea for Threadless in their community model is that they begin really with the end in mind. And I think that this is instructional. You may not be able to copy their model. Obviously, few people could. But the idea behind this is that they began with the end in mind of having a thrilled graphic designer who could sell their work guaranteed to thousands of happy buyers. They completely disrupted the model in printing, in t-shirts, in retail, you name it. There's about 10 models they disrupted. They do a tremendous amount of education. They really don't do any selling. It's all teaching people how to participate in the community. They have now formed some incredible for-profit and non-profit partnerships. They've actually built an entire platform where now their community members and their employees are actually creating and spinning off businesses with the help of the Threadless community. The business has actually become, the community has actually become a platform for something much greater than selling t-shirts. In fact, that's just sort of the disguise that they happen to wear. So clarity is focus, strategy. Culture in a business is simply clarity amplified, and community is the natural outcome of communicating that clarity, what you believe in. So I'm going to be the first one to ask the question. And it's one that I've asked now to hundreds, no, I take that back, thousands of small business owners, and I get one of about 3 reactions. One is, let me tell you the answer to that. I know the answer to that. I've lived that. Number 2 is, I have no idea what you're talking about. And number 3, probably the scarier, is I've forgotten the answer to this. What is it about the work you do that makes it worth it? Pretty tough question, isn't it? But you better know the answer. Thank you all very much. Some of you that purchase books, I'll be at the bookseller table for a few minutes for anybody that wants me to sign them. Is that the correct protocol? And thank you all again very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.